Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today. This is Wild Apricot's second expert webinar on recruiting members for Keeps with Patricia Hudson from Melos Institute. While we're waiting to get started and while participants are logging in, I'm just going to quickly go over a few technical details. First, if you're calling in, you'll also need to log onto your computer and launch the GoToWebinar application to see the actual presentation. We'll also be recording this session, but all attendees will be muted during the entire session. However, in your question pane, you can tell us if you're having any technical difficulties or post your questions there throughout the presentation, and we'll take them towards the end. We'll also capture all your questions, and the presenter will answer these questions after the webinar in a blog post that we'll share with you in a follow-up email. So now I want to get right to it. Our presenter today is Patricia A. Hudson. She is founder and president of the Melos Institute, which is an independent nonprofit research center providing cutting-edge research focused on finding new and better ways to build highly engaged membership communities. Trish, thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to pass over presenter control to you in 1 second here, and we can get started. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you, Lori. It's a delight to be with you. Thank you all for being so persistent and being able to come back and join us. We missed you last time. Hopefully we will have everything available for you that we had before. But let me just begin by saying, when we talk about recruiting for Keeps, and we talk about recruiting for Keeps in highly engaged membership communities, what we're basically looking at are institutions and organizations that represent individuals who are interested in professional, trade, or personal avocation, advancing their bodies of knowledge, and we'll talk about that. However, I recognize that a lot of folks out there, a lot of friends that are out there and colleagues like the work that we do, you're interested in the larger nonprofit community. So we're going to share with you information specifically focused on membership-based organizations that represent trades, professions, and personal avocations. Those who represent advocacy groups, I'll make adjustments as we go through today so that you'll have an opportunity to be able to see what adaptations you might make to have it work in your setting as well. But let's begin by thinking about what is it that we want to do in the time we're going to be sharing together. We're looking at the issues about membership recruitment. And what that means is that oftentimes we've been instructed that membership is a selling proposition, that we've promised outcomes to members, and we want to know how do we actually make sure that those get delivered. And that oftentimes the type of recruitment that we've had over the course of time has been not necessarily very exciting for a lot of volunteers to engage in, and even some staff, and it becomes off-putting. But what does this actually mean? Let us begin by taking a look at just a couple of issues surrounding the concept of recruitment in membership-based organizations. So let's start by just thinking about when you pick up a book, when you read an article, when you're surfing the internet, when you attend a webinar like this one on membership, you often hear the following kinds of advice. Membership is determining how many members your organization needs to sustain itself. Understand the value of membership before you start selling. What associations are facing today is significantly more substantial than what they faced in the 1930s and 40s. Technology has been a game changer, giving people access to networks and information without the assistance of associations. In essence, you're becoming irrelevant. And finally, it's difficult to market association membership. With advice like that, it's not surprising that most of us would want to head for the hills and not be involved in membership at all. However, let us share with you something that can possibly change your thoughts about this and then enable you to change the thoughts of others. Because in essence, membership is one of the most extraordinary opportunities that people have in this organization. But what we believe is that the major problem is that the way that membership has been framed over the last several decades has caused us to have a very different view of what this function is, and it's caused people to not necessarily want to be as involved. So today, let us put membership on trial for a very short period of time and see if indeed have we been encouraged to focus more on the mechanics of membership recruitment than focus on what really matters about membership recruitment. So let's take a quick look at a couple of key findings and facts, and I'm going to give you some evidence, and then we'll together we'll see, does this actually hold true? Let's put membership marketing on trial. Let's have you be the jury and see where we can go with this. So let me put the first fact on the table. One of the major things that drives our work and the way we do it are the assumptions that predicate the strategies we put in place. And here are 4 that are just have been prevalent for some time. The times are different. It's not like it used to be. Members want more for less. Generations want different things. And people can get the same thing from the web they can get from your association. I'm sure many of you have heard this time and time again. And when you get that when you hear that, it gives you it makes you feel oftentimes, if you're like me, makes you feel like, well, why bother? It just seems like it's very difficult to be able to make things happen. So let me share with you a key finding from the evidence that we've had in being able to learn more about membership-based organizations. I'm putting on the screen here a quote that we got in some of the research we did of membership-based organizations. And this particular one comes out of the Society of Automotive Engineers. Obviously, you can read it, but so let me just reaffirm it by saying the quote says, there wasn't much enthusiasm for the next couple of years, and it was very hard to prize a certain amount of money each year out of members. Now, this is a very interesting quote because it focuses on the issue of dues and value and perception of the organization. So what I'm going to ask you to do in your own setting is to think about what date would you put on that particular quote. If you were going to be asked to do that, what would that be? So I'm going to ask you to do that in a moment, and then we'll take a look to go the next step. So think about what that is. Okay, so let's go to the next step. 1930. That particular quote came out of a published history of a membership-based organization that many years ago. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to say, let's see if we have the right poll, if I can do this for you. Okay. I'm going to ask, did this date surprise you? Just let me know yes or no. Quickly poll. Okay, let's close the poll. Most of you have had an opportunity to vote. So by and large, 60% of our folks said that, yes, that surprised them. And that's what happened to us. We started looking at the published histories of membership-based organizations from the 1800s all the way to the 2000s. And quotes like this that talked about member value, leaders not having time, members being too busy, individuals wanting more for their membership than what they were willing to pay, value against money. It just was prevalent across the board. And so we've come to recognize in the research that we've done that we, in essence, have in many ways, we have embraced a lot of these assumptions without really having any real evidence. So the findings that we have is that when we look at environment, when we look at technology, when we look at generational differences, what we find is that when you look at membership-based organizations, the one constant that hasn't changed is that humans still come to the organization and look at the organization with goals and aspirations. And in many ways, what we're saying is that hasn't changed. Whether someone's 20 or 50 or 80, whether someone is just starting in their business or starting in their profession or has a particular interest in an area, or whether they've been doing it for decades, they always have goals. And that is a very important fact when we think about recruitment, and we'll share that with you in a moment. So let's look at the next piece of evidence. Oftentimes, what we're encouraged to do is to recognize that membership recruitment is the same as selling. So let me just share with you one of the stories that we got from a member who's with the California Society of Enrolled Agents. And Lillian was asked, like many of her colleagues at a particular leadership conference, to just share a few notes about what membership has meant to her. And what she shared with us as a professional person working as an enrolled agent, which is a person who does tax forms, is that in essence, the organization did so much more than just give her an opportunity to go to a meeting or give her an opportunity to buy a book. What this organization did for her was it gave her the opportunity to self-reflect on who she was, what she had to offer, and gave her the confidence to be able to do something in a way that she never thought she could today. And along the way, she ended up being able to connect with individuals who became friends and mentors and teachers. in essence, that is a really powerful message. And when we do this activity, and we have this activity available for you on our website if you want to download it and use it for your own members, is that we find these stories become remarkable, extraordinary, and powerful, and they remind us that so much more happens in these organizations than simply providing programs, products, and services. What we find is that membership recruitment is not a transaction. It is not selling something to people and then saying, now that you've bought this membership, now you're on your own, good luck. Membership recruitment is entry into a very dynamic and unique and distinctive community where people share a lot of the same ideas and goals and share a lot of the same perspectives. Now, if you're involved in a general nonprofit that's more cause-oriented or advocacy-oriented, you're really looking at your community to have a very diverse set of backgrounds among your people that are involved. However, the one commonality that you have with them, they have with each other, is the cause itself. So it's a little bit more nuanced, but the approach I'll be sharing with you can be adapted for that particular group. Because what happens when people come into a group setting that becomes a community, because they've built shared goals, they have mutual trust, and out of mutual trust will automatically, you'll find what will emerge is mutual support. And mutual support becomes a development function. People help other individuals see things in themselves they wouldn't see otherwise. People encourage individuals to take risks, to do things outside of a workspace that's safe. People have an opportunity to give others a chance to make meaningful connections. And people have an opportunity then to help contribute back, whether it's in a membership-based organization to advance information and knowledge, or whether it's in the larger organizational cause-oriented organization where you're looking to affect some kind of positive change for a particular issue that you're working with. So the difference here in our finding is that we would be really remiss if we only thought of membership as a sale or a subscription. And the other finding is if we know that membership is a community, then we realize that what we have to focus on as staff and volunteer leaders is that membership requires first admittance, and for membership-based organizations, that's your bylaws that require what eligibility is. And for other cause organizations, it's whatever your parameters are for enabling people to become part of the community. The most important part after admittance is acceptance, and we do very little in that. We hope that that happens unto itself, but in recruitment, that's where the conversation and the recruiting for keeps makes a big difference. It's how we tell people how to navigate into the organization, how to become active in it, not simply that we welcome them with a welcome letter or we hope that they'll come to a meeting and that people will be friendly to them. But ultimately, when we look at membership-based organizations, or we look at the opportunity for individuals to be involved, it's the concept of they'll be able to advance what they're doing or what they're able to contribute back. And that makes a huge difference from thinking about membership as a sale and a transaction. It's actually people coming into a community where you build actually a huge talent pool, where individuals can contribute vertically with you as an organization, but there's an enormous amount of power with individuals to be able to contribute with one another on a horizontal basis between and among each other, and that's an opportunity that we can do more in the future that we've done very little in the past to be able to accomplish. So let me just stop for a moment and see whether these two findings have given you any hope to believe that membership marketing is making it harder to recruit and that possibly going another route would be a lot easier. So let me just poll you to see if you believe that to be true. I'm going to launch it. Just tell me yes or no. Have I given you enough information to be able to encourage you to move forward and take the chance? We're getting there. So we'll get a little over 50. Once we get to about 80%, we'll close and move forward. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. So if you're feeling the way I am, you're feeling kind of relieved, like there is a future. It is possible. We're doing some wonderful work. I'm going to close the poll right now. I want to thank you all who have voted. We're getting resounding 79% of folks who are willing to become part of this future. I'm going to close the poll. Let me just share it with you. See, thus far we've got a group that agrees it's time for us to move in a new direction. So I'm going to share with you one thing before we move forward. Just go back a little bit to that earlier slide. If you need anything to convince your fellow staff, your board members, that there is a difference between for-profit institutions, nonprofit governmental institutions, nonprofit general cause-oriented organizations, and membership-based organizations, there are differences between the way those four institutions operate in society. There's a PDF that you can download. It's a complimentary piece from us that helps you to be able to see that, and you can share it. You can get it through this seminar today, and you can and if you need any further clarification of it, feel free to give me a holler at Melos, and we'll be able to give you some guidance on how to present it to your board or to fellow members or recruits or your staff. So let's take a look at what's going to happen with the balance of our time today. If we know that we can change, that there are opportunities to do something that's going to have a much better outcome, then let's look at how do we use recruitment as a way of building community. How do we approach it rather than as a transaction, instead let's look at it as a relation-centered opportunity. How do we get others excited about wanting to do this, and what kind of tools are available that you can use tomorrow? The basis of our information and research is predicated on not simply a career of working in membership-based organization that spans over a 30-year period, but in the last 10 years we've taken time to take a look at the published histories of over 400 membership-based organizations. Again, we define these institutions as people who are eligible. They're either individuals or organizations, so they're professional, trade, or personal avocation groups where people can voluntarily join together, so we exclude unions. Homeowner associations, it's a very different ballgame for that. We look to organizations that seek to accomplish in their mission, promote and protect the mutual interests of that dynamic, to advance the body of knowledge, to not only advance the body of knowledge, but enable that body of knowledge to advance people individually and collectively so that the trade, profession, or personal avocation can improve. And that it requires a high degree of member engagement for this to occur, because members bring the content knowledge to the table. And these organizations represent about 150,000 nonprofit membership-based organizations among the 1.5 million that exist in our society that are nonprofit with the IRX tax code. So let me just share with you two things before I begin to start highlighting what the approach is. When we looked at the histories and we looked at the practical research that we did with in on-site settings with organizations over the past several decades, what we found most is what they wanted was two things. And this hasn't changed from the 1800s or the 1700s to today. Members want to share and exchange information, and they want to build meaningful relationships. And these two issues are really what drove founders to start these organizations. And those two reasons rarely change when you look at the reason these organizations emerge in a democracy. The other thing that we have learned is that they unexpectedly get something that they didn't realize. And this often happens on the back end of the membership. When they begin to start building relationships, they realize that the following occurs. They gain a social identity they can't find anywhere else. Being a sociologist, when you go to a sociology conference, you realize that talking to fellow colleagues helps you to define yourself. The same as if you're a builder, the same as if you're a businesswoman or a businessman. You go into a setting where people are doing what you're doing, and their conversation, their vocabulary is exactly where you're at. You don't have to explain yourself. People just understand what it is. It is a feeling you cannot get anywhere else because of the nature of it. It's a setting where people get legitimacy and respect for what they do, and then know that the organization is going to enable them to get legitimacy and respect in the outer community. It gives them a safe space to take risks. They don't have to worry about retribution. They don't have to worry about losing or being embarrassed. It's an opportunity to try something in that setting that they couldn't do elsewhere, but it also gives them an opportunity to contribute. And when we talk about contribution and we talk about volunteerism, when you talk about recruiting for keeps, the conversation of involvement is not simply to become active as a volunteer, but to recognize that within a community, members have a horizontal responsibility to one another, that members actually have a need to be able to share and exchange information with each other in formal ways and informal ways, and we'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment. So how do we know this to be true? I'll just share with you this very quick story that was shared with us by a young woman who's a 20-something within a professional association called ASM International. This young woman, as you can see from the slide, began at Westinghouse, but because of her age and because of their perceived lack of her ability gave her very little to be responsible for. But when she went into the association chapter and she had an opportunity to be able to take on a task that needed to be done, what she was able to do was demonstrate that she had experience, expertise, insight, and talent to be able to make a difference. These kinds of stories, again, like the one that you saw with Lillian, when you have an opportunity to get into your membership and talk to your members, or if you're in a general nonprofit and you're a cause-oriented, you talk to individuals who have been active in your organization and you pull from them their stories, which are the most powerful thing you need to be capturing and compiling when it comes to recruiting for keeps. These are the kind of things you're going to be hearing time and time and time again, is that I didn't see something in myself that others did. I didn't recognize I had the opportunity, and when I was given it and I was given encouragement and guidance, it made all the difference. So what is the message at this point? That we have to move away from the membership marketing approach that sees members merely as subscribers and customers. If we think of members as customers, we psychologically write and all our promotional literature and we talk to members like they're customers. If we talk to members like they're customers, then they behave like customers, and there's sound sociological theory that supports that. So we have been perpetuating a behavior that we don't want unintentionally. And what we know now is if we're looking at membership-based organizations, they're multifaceted in purpose. They really are designed to produce positive change and advancement on 3 critical levels, as you can see. And when you look at general nonprofits, they have a very similar type of desired outcome. 2 different types of communities that are formed. The membership base is more homogeneous because they share the same types of backgrounds and goals. The larger organization, the larger nonprofit organization that's focusing on causes brings a diverse group together, a little bit more challenge to get people into the community and feel cohesive with one another, but it can be done. But ultimately, we need a different approach. So let's look at that approach now. What we're going to do is take a look at how do we get there. If we know that membership, if we want to make membership more meaningful, we know that we begin the process by realizing that here's where we are. We are in a membership marketing mindset. We are in a mindset where membership is considered a purchase, and we're ultimately forming a transaction between the organization on a vertical basis with the member. The relationship often then closes with that transaction, and the challenge for us is with every continued interaction with that member, we're basically only seeking a transaction from them. Buy the registration to come to the event, buy the book, buy the webinar. We're basically having solely that kind of conversation, and that's not what we know members want. They want to be in a place where they can share and exchange information and build meaningful relationships. So instead, let's shift our thinking in the new year, and let's move to a concept of membership development, where we're focusing on a realization that from the stories we've learned and from the histories that I've been able to thus far share with you a little bit about that membership is entree into a community where you can make a connection and a pathway for your goals and aspirations to be fulfilled. Because as we know, the one most extraordinary thing about associations, about membership-based organizations, is that there is a relationship formed between you and the member on a vertical basis, but that relationship cannot be compared to the relationships that are horizontally developed between members, between and among themselves, when you give them a chance to connect with individuals, not simply to network, but individuals who can have a meaningful and purposeful impact on what they're doing. And that's the pattern and trend that we're looking at, that we're focusing on membership as really an opportunity to invite people into the community, to give them guidance on how to get their goals accomplished, and that we're really providing for them as recruiters and as leaders a mentored approach to make things work on their behalf. So we need to have a new set of assumptions. We need to realize that members want purposeful connections. People have been busy since the dawn of the Republic, and no amount of technology, no amount of environmental change is going to make a huge difference. It's because people will absorb that as part of their general lifestyle. But what we recognize is that what people want most is that they want these purposeful connections. If they find value in what that can do for them, they will carve out the time to make it work for them. People need to achieve individual goals. They have aspirations. They often have desires. They're often not asked to define them, and they're often not given any guidance on how to be able to accomplish them. You see the same thing in those individuals that are dealing with advocacy groups or other cause-oriented groups. There is a goal that is often undefined. People come to the table with skill and knowledge, expertise, and talents, and they want to be able to provide support to a colleague. They're often not given guidance or support on how to do that. And they want to have an opportunity to give back to a chosen field of endeavor. Or in the case of a larger nonprofit or an advocacy group, they want to see what they're working on make a difference. Okay, so when we bring members into this community, if we think of them as customers as we used to, then that relationship is very confined. But if we think of members as citizens of this community that we're building and shaping and expanding and growing, what we realize is that just like in a democracy, which is just the way these organizations are defined, just like in a democracy, they come to the table with rights and privileges. Every citizen comes with rights and privileges. And what that means in your organization is that they come by virtue of their dues to get access to the information you have to offer and the opportunity to participate with other members that are part of the organization. What we fail to spend a lot of time talking about as part of the citizen of a community is that we have duties and obligations. They have duties and obligations. Much like in the democracy, we are obliged to live and operate in civil society. We are obliged really to vote. That's an important responsibility in a democracy. Whether people do it or not is a whole different ballgame. However, duties and obligations are as essential for citizens of a membership-based community, because what we're talking about is making the right match for them. We're looking to learn what their rights and privileges are, what their aspirations are, make the match of where that can work. What we're also interested in is learning from them on the other side of the coin is what are their talents and skills and opportunities that they can give back? What are the connections they have? Who do they know? What could they be helping us do because of the background they have? And making matches that work for them in their frame of reference, whether that would be sitting for 5 minutes for lunch with someone, or whether that would be spending 3 months in helping on a task force, or whether that might be spending 6 lunches with a colleague to talk about a specific issue. Because, my friends, what we find is that when people are matched to be able to fulfill their rights and privileges, they keep coming back, they want more out of the organization, they gain greater involvement from just helping as an individual at an event, to be able to be a volunteer, to be able to take on a much more responsible role. And because of that, what happens is they find the best in themselves. They find their own inner Superman. And the joy of what this happens is that we know this to be true. The challenge for us is we're not providing enough guidance for every member of the organization that wants this experience to be able to have it. Now, I'm not saying every member should be in a leadership role, but every member has the opportunity to exchange and work and share with fellow members, and to be able to do that, that can have as transformative a role for an individual on how they see themselves as someone who wants to aspire to the presidency. That's the unique distinction that associations have that you just cannot find in other places. So let's take a look at how we want to look at this. If you look at the member experience, what we know is that the way, just like at the top, the way we communicate with members, how we inspire them to aspire to a new and different quality of life or a new and different goal for themselves, what that does is it alters the environment and how they see the organization, and we do that as volunteer and staff leaders and key volunteers by communicating the story and the message. We know that members go through a variety of different experiences, from being outside the organization as a prospect, where we promise them something's going to happen, we bring them into the organization, we need to provide them guidance if we want them to take the roles that follow down the road. There are two things that are important for us to understand. The first is that we want members to know that the promise has two components to it in the conversation that we have with them. The first is well known. What's in it for me? When we were working in getting Melos off the ground, we were fortunate enough to meet the gentleman and have him on our leadership team who actually formed this phrase. And what he meant by it was not so that members were selfish or members needed to be selfish or were greedy, but that the responsibility of the organization was to help members define their goals and be able to make the first match in the organization that worked for them. What we have since discovered here at Melos, and that we want to share with you today, is that that's the rights and privileges part of the citizenship. The other part of citizenship is what we call WICM. And it's not just teaching members in the conversation of recruiting for keeps what's in it for me, but it's also helping them to recognize that they have a question of what contribution can I make. And again, the wide spectrum of not simply being a volunteer on a committee, not simply being in the leadership team or on the board, but to be of access and value to fellow members. And in a larger organization where you're dealing with larger nonprofits where you're dealing with causes and advocacy, the same social bond is essential. Is that not just what can I get by being involved for my own needs, but what can I contribute back such that I can see that there has been a change made that can accomplish what I need to accomplish. So if we look at that as the opportunities before us, what I'm going to ask is a key question of whether you believe, because this is the key right now, before we go into looking at the conversation, this is the key. Do you believe that your prospective and current members know how to make the most of their membership? Would you just give us a chance to get a chance to see if you think they're that aware, or are we dealing with some level of uncertainty? So a few seconds to vote. And while you're voting, I will share with you the grid that I just put up there on the screen. You can download. There's a PDF you can download as a little booklet form through this seminar that you'll be able to share with your volunteer leaders and staff. And if you need greater clarity and you'd like to get a few more ideas of how to use it, feel free to give us a holler. Because we're a research and think tank, we don't consult, but we are more than happy to look at ways of making that available that can work for you. I'm going to close the poll. We have about 80% of people involved. So let's take a look at this. We have, for decades, my friends, been scrambling to get people into the organization, right? And we have looked at so much information and suggestions and ways that we can get people to be active as volunteers, and yet we recognize that when members are in their world, they understand how to do their work. When they walk into our world of membership-based organizations or even the cause-oriented setting, they absolutely like walking into a new land. They don't understand it. They don't have any experience that's quite like it. And if we don't educate them and if we don't have the right conversation, we can't recruit them for keeps because they enter thinking and operating as a customer, because being a customer is the only behavior they've been taught in the society. So here, let's look at a way to shift from the traditional transaction in the way that we move forward, which is basically the message in recruitment in a transactional mode is, let me convince you that what we have is worth the dues. 2, look at how we translate that in the current setting. These are some examples that have been kind of sterilized, but these are examples from individuals like yourselves, from your websites that suggest how you communicate membership to members within the prospective members and members within your organization. Look at, if we're just from the information we've been talking about, look and see where the highlight of the organization is. Where is the focus? What is the message that's being communicated? And what we find across the board, if you can see it yourself, is that the message comes primarily from the perspective of the organization. Again, when you think about the early comments that I made at the beginning, membership is determining how many members your organization needs to sustain itself. Members are not the center. Members are important for the organization to be able to do its work. And the message that our members are getting is that you just need to be here so we can get our work done and you can give us money. And you see that in the way that information is shared across the board. When you see this slide, it's legislative that's important. It's limiting where you can get in. It's information that has to be translated in a way that makes sense to a member, because it makes sense to us as staff, but to members who read it or prospective members to read it, it really doesn't make as much sense at all. Another example of a way in which membership has been presented. It presents information as being fee-based, value-based, putting a dollar value to it. And what we know about organizations is that when there's any competitive nature in any type of organizational unit, whether for-profit or non-profit, if all the benefits are the same, then the basic focus will distill down to price. And that'll be the only thing people talk about. When we have been presenting membership as a financial gain, then the only thing members will ask us about will be the value of the price. And that automatically puts any recruiter on the defensive. And that makes it very hard then, because if a member isn't that familiar with all the programs, products, and services, they're not really familiar with how to overcome the apprehension about selling, then it becomes less interesting for members to want to be part of a recruitment process. One more. We're going to just quickly look at this one. Again, no information about benefits and services, no information about what it means to be a member of a community. Just here are the categories and please join. So when we think about that we've been focusing in that arena only on the mechanics, are we not surprised why members are not necessarily as eager to want to be part of the process? But what is the way we can shift? Whether you're dealing with professional trade or personal avocations as backgrounds, adapting what we're talking about here for advocacy groups or other types of nonprofits, consider the conversation being focused on it more relation-centered as opposed to join to enable the organization to be better. Now we're going to talk about instead, let us talk about you first. Who you are, what your goals and aspirations are, and let us show you how being involved in our community can give you immediate access to change and address the things that are most important to you. Let us start with you. Let's start with your what's in it for me and make that match rather than trying to convince you by presenting a whole deli tray of information that we're not even sure is going to match with what your interests are. And one of the examples came out of the work we did a long time ago with a trade association in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. And we worked with the volunteers and the staff and did a lot of on-site recruitment with them over the years. And what we found was this was the kind of conversation that worked for volunteers to go out and talk to fellow builders and talk to fellow associate members. It started with, tell me about you. It started with, tell me what's important to you, and I will prove to you through matching you with a particular program, product, or service we have to offer, and if there isn't something there that's information-based, I will also share with you a person in the organization that is immediately going to be able to address what you're looking for. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the other benefits we have, because I don't want you to be isolated in one arena, and knowing that this is going to demonstrate to you that being here is the investment you have never realized could be of value to you for the course of your life and the course of your career. Not only will I guarantee that, but when you join, I will be the first person to help guide you through the process. Again, admittance, acceptance, and guidance for them to have advancement. Now, let me share with you another way that you can take that concept and put that in a messaging way. This was put in print, but we'll show you in a minute how you might be able to do it a little bit differently. But look at, don't limit yourself on thinking that's print. Look at the concepts. The concepts are you're becoming part of the organization because we are here to be your conduit for your solution. We care about you advancing in ways that may matter for you, and then we want to tap what you have to offer to be able to benefit the organization, the fellow membership, the community, the discipline we represent. And when you look at the way they present this, even though this is for a professional society, this would be even more important for a trade professional, because it's hard to read the yellow, so let me put up a little bit darker version. When you look at it, what they're basically saying is every moment of the day you're faced with problems. And let us show you how matching with something we have to offer at this organization would be a godsend for you, would help you to become part of the organization, the rights and privileges of citizenship. And then what you also need to recognize is the opportunity for them to be able to learn the obligations and duties that come with being available, helping to be part of a local chapter, being part of being with other folks, and being able to share what they know and learn, because that's the other side, that's the Wickham side, the what contribution can I make. If you look at how they do that now in a digital form, not quite as exciting, not quite as colorful, not any photos, which would be nice to have, but basically they're doing the same thing. We're here to be of value to you. And once we know that you're in, because they know from their own experience, once you're in, you want to be involved in other things. You'll get a greater appreciation for the legislative need. We don't need to put that up front because, frankly, most prospective members and current members know that legislative activities, that advocacy is going to occur whether or not they join. So it's really never a high selling point in a membership experience. What you're really looking to do is talk about the opportunity for them to find solutions for what they need. Another professional society wanted to give you this example because they put a video in place that is member-focused. It's not the staff telling them what is going to happen. It's people doing the work itself that makes the difference. It's members telling their stories. There's nothing more powerful than members telling their stories. And the beauty is you can get those stories from members so easily. And once you have them permanently, and you can use them. And when you get 10 stories, you get 12 other people that want to tell you their stories too. It becomes magnetic, it becomes exciting, it becomes inspiring, not only for the members and the volunteer leaders who get to read them, but for staff as well. And this is another way that ASM then talks about, we are here to be of support to you. We are here to help you advance your life. And lastly, one other example, I just want to share with you how a business organization does it in North Carolina. And if they're on with a call with us today, again, I want to thank them, from Cary, North Carolina, because look at the way in which they invite people into the community. They do it through photo, they do it through graphic. Now, it may not, the way they approach it may be a little bit more than you might do in your website, but look at the concepts. It's not so much the formatting, but look at the concepts. It's about welcome, it's about community, it's about video stories again. Here's what it means when you become part of our community. Here's what it means to become part of our membership. When you're part of us, we're interested in what happens for you. We are about you first. And then we want to know more about you so that we can get you volunteering, get you active in the right place. But look at what the messages are when you have a chance to really get down and look at this. Valuable, powerful, communal-oriented, relation-centered. There's very little here that says, buy us, and then we'll promise you we'll send you some literature. So how do we take it the next step? In the last few minutes available, what is it that we want to do? If you want to get others enlisted, you need to give them guidance. And organizations like the Enrolled Agents took relation-centered concepts and embedded them in their recruitment kit, their recruitment manual that they share with other volunteer leaders and other volunteers. What it does, and this is available for you to download from this seminar, what it provides is an opportunity to teach members that their job is to explore, to invite, to match, and to mentor. There's nothing in here about selling. In fact, please, we encourage people to run as far away from selling as possible. The second thing in this interesting little slide is that there are 3 critical questions that volunteer leaders and staff and volunteers can be asking that begin the relation-centered process. Tell me about you. Tell me about what's important to you. Tell me about what your concerns are about this profession or the trade or the personal avocation or this advocacy group that we're dealing with. And let me prove to you how extraordinary being part of this community can be when I match you to what it is that is available. So I'm going to stop for now. I think we've covered quite a bit of ground. Appreciate you sitting and listening. It's always hard to listen for a period of time and take everything in. Hopefully we've shared some new thoughts. As you venture into the new year, you might say, I want to begin to start embracing a new way of thinking and see where this can go. So Lori, let's just see what kind of questions might have emerged during the webinar today, and then we'll take the final steps before we close for the day.
Wow, great. Thanks, Trish. That was so much information. While people are putting in their questions, we have one here. How would you apply this strategy to different generations?
So one of the things that we've been doing in sharing is we've brought, when we do our research, we bring in people across generations and across different disciplines. And when we talk to members and we talk to individuals who are either university scholars or volunteer leaders or staff, professionals, or content specialists, what we're finding is the conversation doesn't necessarily need to change. The conversation of tell me about you and tell me what's important to you so I can match you to what makes sense, we're finding is that the beauty of that conversation enables especially younger generations to realize that simply surfing the web only limits them to those who are on the web at that moment or in that social media venue. If they come into the community, they have access to people that they never would find in that setting, and in fact, people who might even enable them to accomplish more of what they want to do than those who they can build relationships with in the setting. And that has happened time and time again, where individuals want to access and build relationships with others who have much more tenure, much more experience, much more access to help them with their careers. And younger generations are often eager to rise up through the work that they do, and they find they can't simply do that by talking to people who are doing the same work or at the same level they are. They need to be expanding out and talking to people who have greater insight and access into other avenues. And this is an opportunity to reframe that conversation, because there is this mindset that everybody's on the web, and in fact, not true. And in fact, community is a very different experience when you build relationships that have mutual trust and mutual support than having this kind of community that's more digital-based and connected in that way. So give it a try. If you want, if whoever has that question, if they want a lot more specific ideas of what you could do within your institution, feel free to give us a holler.
Okay, thank you. That was great. And just to remind everyone, we are going to be sending out links to this presentation, the slide, the recording, and all of Tricia's materials in a follow-up email. We're getting lots of comments saying that. So here's a good question. In a membership survey, what one question would you regard as the most important to ask members to find out their perception of an association, or maybe to find out also their aspirations and what they want?
So I would ask two questions. Never just one. First question is, never ask what are your needs. People very rarely can do that. But ask what they anticipate is going to be their greatest hurdles or challenges in the next period of time, whether 6 months, 12 months, or something like that. And if you're looking for people to, we very rarely are willing to open up without really understanding who we're talking to. So one of the things that you might want to do to try to get a better idea of their aspiration is to ask the question, what would be something that would fulfill an interest or a desire that you've often thought about? Rather than trying to get them to pinpoint something specifically, begin to get them used to and trusting you that you're interested in who they are. Remember, many of these organizations and many of their previous experiences have been, people have said they're interested in them until they pay their dues, and then they don't hear anything till the renewal bill comes. So we're rebuilding, and we have to take it slowly a little bit until we can prove that we actually care. Because once you get that information, you have to turn it back to them with some idea of how they can make the match. If you're looking for an idea, one of the things that we have that you might want to think about doing is instituting, whether digitally or in a physical space, instituting a member orientation that teaches them what it means to be a member and then teaches them how to navigate the organization to get what they need. And it's a very simple process. Again, you can use volunteers to be able to do this, and that's also available for download. We've given the link to Lori to be able to share with you. But that's another way to begin, once they've joined, to say, now that you've joined, it's essential for you to become part of this next step. Would you be willing to be part of an orientation in a webinar? Would you be willing to be part of an orientation at an event? Would you be willing to get a phone call from someone who could do a one-on-one interview with you, where we can then have that private conversation? It's often hard to put that in a survey, but you can begin by providing a more general request. I hope that helps. If not, give me a holler directly.
Okay, thanks, Trish. And I think this is a good follow-up question. You mentioned some great initiatives and follow-up steps to do after you start engaging people. But what advice would you have for small groups with limited volunteers or actually no staff and very few financial resources? What are some of the best things they can do?
So the best recruitment, even in the for-profit world, we've learned is member get a member. There's nothing more powerful than members reaching out, individuals reaching out to one another. My suggestion is collect your stories. Once you have your stories of how being involved as a member has made a difference in your life, Those can be used in digital form, print form, personal conversation with individuals, videos. You can do videos that you can put on. There are lots of different ways you can begin to share that and build an excitement, an inspiration, and a momentum that being involved in this community has such powerful impact on lives. And that becomes what we often say is a magnet. The last thing you want to do is position yourself as an organization that's competing for someone's attention with everything else in their world, or others that are similar like yours. But if you position yourself as a unique and distinctive place where when you come into this community, we want to make sure that we match to what you need when you need it, teach you how to get it when you need it, but we also want to learn who you are so we can have you contribute in ways that make sense to you. Then you have a very different type of organization and community, and it takes a bit of time for everyone to be willing to have that kind of conversation and community. When you have that, you have members for keeps, you have momentum, you have an organization that builds because people throng to be in a place where they are encouraged to be the best they can be.
Okay, and that's a good segue into this question. So if you're sharing stories, collecting stories, what have you found to be the most effective way of encouraging dialogue and sharing among members? So is online discussion boards a good way, listservs, social media?
So a lot depends on what activities you offer as an organization. There are ways in print, in digital form, and in on-site events to be able to get people to move out of their comfort zone of just talking about the weather and their kids and the distance that they took or what they have on their agenda today. There are lightly structured activities, and if you want, give me a holler and we could talk about ones that might be the best to begin for wherever you are as an organization with whatever you want to accomplish. But it begins to get people out of that box, and it gives them permission to talk about things that they wouldn't normally talk about unless you ask them. What we're finding in membership-based organizations, and you may see the same thing in larger nonprofits and advocacy groups, is that when you bring large groups of people together, we often form our own personal private space. And it's very hard for us to break out of that, no matter how gregarious we are, because we're not certain about the group that we're in, and we're not certain about the norms and the culture and the way that organization operates. And the one thing we're most concerned about is being embarrassed or doing something that would be not welcomed by the group. So these lightly structured activities come on the back end of membership, of recruitment. They come on the back end where we orient and socialize members and teach them how to navigate the organization, enable them to realize that reaching out only gets them incredible responses from other members because that cultural norm is shared by everyone in the organization, or at least most members, that if you reach out, you will get a hand reaching out to you, whether it's in digital form or in physical form where you're on site, or whether you're in a social media outlet. Again, if you want specific examples, give me a holler and we could talk about what would best match for what you're looking to do. And again, we are not a consulting firm, so we're not looking for work. We're looking for organizations that want to embrace this concept and are willing to pilot a variety of ideas. What we ask of you is that whatever you do, when it works, because we expect it to, you enable us to write about it and share it with other folks around the country and around the world that want to do what you're doing.
So on that note, I've found that a mix of events and online follow-up are really effective in what you're alluding to there. So Trish, this is a more challenging question. This one association is a mix of individuals but also organizations. So how would you apply this strategy to, not just a member level, but an institution to institution level? Do you have recommendations for that?
So when you're looking at institution to institution, what you're basically doing is building a federation. And federations are led by individuals who have to represent and have to be concerned about what those institutions need to accomplish. So you basically raise the dialogue away from a personal goal, a personal aspiration, to what is it the organization is looking to accomplish. The match is as important. This is something that I had an opportunity to do as a community organizer working in a community dealing with teenage pregnancy. We brought the medical community together, the educational community, the social service community together, and we had discussions with them about what their organizations needed to accomplish. And oddly enough, when you have it, it's amazing that you will find people across the spectrum that don't know the other has an interest or a knowledge or an ability or an opportunity to connect and be of service to each other. But when you're able to get them to realize what is there, you open up the same excitement, the same inspiration that can happen between member to member. So organizations, it's simply about realizing you're dealing with a federated approach, identify organizational needs, and you begin to start looking at ways in which the connections can make a difference as you're moving forward with whatever your focus is for that particular mission of that federated group.
Great. That's a great answer. And on a more specific level, someone has a question here. Their demographic is older males and generally with a lower education level. So some of the examples you showed were more focused on women. Do you have any examples of how male-to-male groups have been successful in recruiting? And
well, I can share with you that the one place where we gained an enormous amount of insight were builders. And builders, the average age of the builder when I was involved with the association was in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And the one thing that we found is that builders want to do three things. They want to save time, save money, and make money. And those generally are the aspirations they have. What they often are looking for, and what we've found for individuals at advanced ages, is that oftentimes because they have tenure in their experience, what they're looking for is an opportunity to be able to have dialogue with one another for perspective, or to share with younger members, or to find out that there might be something that they haven't learned that they still can employ. So when you're looking at individuals at advanced ages, never lose sight of the fact that regardless of education, regardless of profession, trade, or background, that what people have is a desire to be able to advance in what they're doing. And once you can target that and find that, then you can create an opportunity for them to come together to be able to address what they're looking for. But for a lot of individuals in that arena, it's being able to save time, save money, or make money.
Okay, that's great, Trish. And that wraps up all the questions, actually, which is perfect timing. So I know you have a few more wrap-up slides here.
So if we're looking at what is it that you can do to actually recruit for keeps, what you basically want to do is realize that your members are citizens. And in the larger nonprofit community where you're dealing with advocacy, it's a little nuanced, but you're dealing with a population that a diverse population that you're looking to align. In membership-based organizations, your homogeneous community, it makes it really a wonderful place to be able to build citizenship with members. That you've got to start looking at not solely the relationship you have with the member on a vertical basis, but you need to also recognize the power of the horizontal connection in the talent pool that you're building as members. And this holds true also in your advocacy groups. That what you are now looking at is the greatest benefit. That talent pool actually can be a solution for regardless of whether you have a program, product, or service on the table. And that the importance, regardless of whether you're looking at an organizational level, you're looking at an individual level, individuals are involved at each of those stages, and finding out what's important to them or what's important for them within the context of the organization is important. And by virtue of once people come in, once you admit them and enable them through acceptance and teaching them how to leverage the organization, how to navigate it, you then enable them through the activities that you do to create the social bonds that are going to ensure the renewal. So in essence, what are some other things beyond that? The first is getting a discussion with your membership committee or recruiters. Are they on board with this kind of idea? Second, would the board support this? Would they also do some practice interviewing? Would they take those three questions I shared earlier of who you are, what are your aspirations, and what's important to you? Review your own literature. What's the focus and perspective? Is it coming from your perspective and your members and prospective members have to interpret it, or is it coming from the member's perspective where they can read it and understand it directly? Using your volunteers to actually give you that guidance is essential. And then finally, reach out and do some testing. You never have to, the beauty of relation-centered membership and relation-centered recruitment, you don't have to radically change. You can evolve this into your organization in ways that are safe and give you an opportunity to practice and make sure it's where you want to go. Because ultimately, my friends, what we know about people and we know about society right now across generations is that what people want most is to be able not to be asked to do the least. They want to be able to be encouraged to do the best, to find the best in themselves, and to work on things they care about deeply. And I thank you for your time today. This is what some of our literature looks like. I know that Lori will be sharing with you the links to what makes to be able to get them. This is all complimentary, but this will give you the beginnings of what will help you to understand what relation-centered membership looks like and gives you an opportunity to recruit for keeps. Lori, thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone. Have a great holiday. And Lori, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Patricia. That was a wonderful presentation, great recap, great questions. We'll be writing all the questions in a follow-up blog post and, of course, sharing the presentation, the recording, and everything with you. So I believe we put the link already to Tricia's website in the chat box, and you saw it on that slide there. So please do visit it, as well as visit wildapricot.com. If you're not already a client, we provide software for nonprofits, membership management, associations, and clubs, and we're rated the #1 top membership management software 2 years in a row by Capterra, so we're worth a try. So sign up for a free trial if you haven't already tried us. Okay, thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great day.